Young couples hear this clearly. Love is not supposed to feel confusing, exhausting, or unstable. If you're always questioning where you stand, afraid to speak your truth, or mistaking chaos for passion, something is wrong. Feelings may bring two people together, but it's maturity, consistency, and character that keep them together. Real love isn't loud or dramatic, it's clear, intentional, and emotionally safe. If you want a relationship that lasts, growth has to matter more than comfort. Growth over comfort is the decision that quietly determines whether a relationship survives or slowly falls apart. And most young couples don't realize this early enough. They think love is supposed to feel easy all the time. They think if it's right, it won't require discomfort, effort, or self-examination. But the truth is, the moment you choose comfort over growth, you start choosing stagnation. And stagnation kills relationships. Comfort says, this is just how I am. Growth says, I'm willing to look at myself honestly. Comfort avoids hard conversations because they feel awkward. Growth understands that avoiding them creates resentment. Comfort wants peace at any cost. Growth wants progress, even if it means temporary discomfort. And too many relationships fail not because there isn't love, but because neither person is willing to evolve. Here's the reality. The version of you that entered the relationship is not enough to sustain it long term. Not because you're flawed, but because life will demand more of you, more patience, more emotional intelligence, more accountability. If you're not growing, you're expecting your partner to carry the weight of your stagnation, and that's unfair. Growth means learning how to communicate instead of reacting. It means recognizing when your ego is louder than your understanding. It means asking yourself, am I listening to respond or am I listening to understand? Because love doesn't break down in big dramatic moments. It breaks down in the small ones where nobody feels heard. A lot of young couples confuse compromise with self-sacrifice. Growth doesn't mean losing yourself to keep the relationship. It means strengthening yourself so the relationship can be healthier. You don't grow by tolerating disrespect. You grow by addressing it. You don't grow by suppressing your needs. You grow by expressing them clearly and responsibly. And let's talk about emotional maturity, because that's where growth really shows. Emotional maturity is not about never getting upset. It's about how you handle being upset. It's about not punishing your partner with silence. It's about not using anger as a weapon. It's about taking responsibility for your triggers instead of blaming your partner for them. Growth requires self-awareness, and self-awareness is uncomfortable because it forces you to confront parts of yourself you'd rather ignore. It forces you to admit when you're wrong without justifying it. It forces you to apologize without defending yourself. And that's hard, but that's also where real intimacy is built. You cannot expect your relationship to grow if you refuse to grow as an individual. Love doesn't magically fix insecurity, poor communication, or unresolved emotional habits. Those things show up louder in close relationships. That's why growth has to be intentional. You have to be willing to unlearn behaviors that no longer serve you. You have to be willing to ask, how can I show up better? Not just, why aren't they doing more? And understand this, growth is not one-sided. If only one person is evolving while the other is comfortable staying the same, imbalance sets in. Resentment follows. Attraction fades. Not because love disappeared, but because alignment did. Relationships thrive when both people are committed to becoming better. Not just staying together. Choosing growth also means letting go of the fantasy version of love. Love is not about mind reading. It's not about constant excitement. It's about two people choosing to do the work even when it's inconvenient, especially when it's inconvenient, because comfort will always tempt you to stay the same, but growth is what keeps love alive. If you want a relationship that lasts, stop asking how to keep things easy and start asking how to build something strong, because comfort feels good in the moment, but growth is what creates a future worth staying for. Communication is not just about talking, it's about leadership. And most young couples don't approach it that way. They approach communication emotionally, impulsively, and defensively. They speak to win, to prove a point, or to release frustration. But when communication becomes reaction instead of intention, it stops building connection and starts creating distance. Strong communication begins with understanding this simple truth: how you say something matters just as much as what you say. You can be honest and still be harmful. You can be truthful and still be careless. Leadership in communication means you take responsibility for the impact of your words, not just the intent behind them. Too many arguments escalate because both people are trying to be right instead of trying to understand. Voices get louder, patience gets thinner, and suddenly the goal isn't resolution, it's control. But love doesn't require dominance, it requires clarity, and clarity only comes when you slow down enough to speak with purpose. Reactive communication sounds like blame. It sounds like accusations. It sounds like you always and you never. Leadership communication sounds like ownership. It sounds like this is how I feel and this is what I need. One creates defensiveness, the other creates space for understanding. And let's be honest, silence can be just as destructive as yelling. Avoiding conversations because you don't want conflict doesn't make you peaceful, it makes you unavailable. When you shut down, you're not protecting the relationship, you're starving it. Unspoken feelings don't disappear, they turn into resentment. And resentment is quiet at first, but it's powerful. Leadership means you don't wait until you're angry to speak. You address things early, calmly, and clearly. You don't let small issues pile up until they explode into something bigger than they ever needed to be. You understand that discomfort now is better than damage later. Another hard truth: tone reveals maturity. When emotions rise, your ability to stay respectful shows how emotionally developed you are. Losing control of your tone doesn't make your point stronger. It makes it easier to dismiss. If you want to be heard, you have to speak in a way that invites listening. Leadership communication also means listening without preparing your response. Too often, people hear just enough to interrupt. They listen to react, not to understand. But when your partner feels truly heard, half the conflict dissolves on its own. Validation doesn't mean agreement. It means acknowledgement. And acknowledgement is powerful. There's also courage involved in clear communication. Saying what you feel, asking for what you need, and expressing boundaries requires bravery. Games are easy. Hints are easy. Avoidance is easy. Directness takes confidence. But confidence is attractive, and clarity builds trust. If you expect your partner to read your mind, you're setting the relationship up for failure. If something matters to you, say it. If something hurts you, express it. If something needs to change, address it. Love doesn't grow in confusion, it grows in transparency. Leadership in communication means you don't weaponize words, you don't bring up the past to win the present, you don't use sarcasm to mask resentment, you don't speak with the intention to hurt just because you're hurt. You understand that once words leave your mouth, they can't be taken back, and accountability matters here. When you communicate poorly, you own it. You don't justify it with stress, anger, or frustration. You take responsibility and do better next time. That's how trust is built, not by being perfect, but by being accountable. Healthy communication creates emotional safety. Emotional safety is what allows two people to grow together instead of walking on eggshells around each other. When your partner knows they can speak freely without being attacked, dismissed, or mocked, the relationship deepens naturally. Communication isn't about winning arguments, it's about protecting the connection. When you lead with clarity, respect, and intention, you don't just solve problems, you strengthen the bond. Because when two people learn to communicate with purpose instead of impulse, love stops feeling chaotic and starts feeling solid. Love is not something that just happens to you and then magically sustains itself. That idea sounds romantic, but it's also dangerous. Because when people believe love is automatic, they stop being intentional, they stop choosing, they stop showing up with purpose, and then they're confused when the relationship starts to feel distant, disconnected, or empty. Real love is built in the small, unglamorous decisions made every day. It's in how you speak when it's tired, it's in how you respond when you're annoyed, it's in whether you choose understanding over defensiveness, effort over excuses, presence over distraction. Love doesn't fade because feelings disappear, it fades because intention does. At the beginning, everything feels natural. Attention is effortless, patience is high, affection flows easily. But that stage is not the standard, it's the introduction. The real work begins when comfort sets in. That's when intention becomes essential, because familiarity can either deepen love or dull it depending on how you show up. Intentional love means you don't wait until something is wrong to care. You don't wait until your partner is distant to become attentive. You don't wait until problems pile up to start trying again. You stay engaged even when things feel routine, especially when they feel routine. Too many couples operate on autopilot. They assume love will survive neglect. They assume history will compensate for effort. But love doesn't thrive on assumptions, it thrives on actions, and the smallest consistent actions often matter more than grand gestures. Being intentional means you notice your partner. You notice when their energy shifts. You notice when something feels off. And instead of ignoring it, you lean in. You ask questions. You check in. You don't dismiss changes as mood swings or overthinking. You understand that emotional distance usually starts quietly. Intentional love also means choosing your partner daily, not just when it's convenient. It means choosing patience when irritation would be easier, choosing loyalty when temptation shows up, choosing honesty when silence feels safer. Love isn't proven by how you feel on good days, it's proven by the choices you make on hard ones. And let's talk about effort, because effort is not a sign that something is wrong. Effort is a sign that something ma. If you stop putting in effort because things feel secure, what you're really saying is that security gives you permission to be careless. And carelessness is one of the fastest ways to weaken a bond. Intentional love requires humility. It requires the ability to say, I can do better, without being forced to. It requires self-reflection, not defensiveness. When your partner expresses a need, intention doesn't respond with excuses, it responds with adjustment. Love is not about perfection. You will mess up, you will misunderstand, you will fall short at times. But intention shows in how quickly you correct, how sincerely you apologize, and how consistently you try again. Another part of intentional love is protecting the relationship. That means protecting it from outside interference, unnecessary comparisons, and unrealistic expectations. Every relationship is different. Comparing yours to what you see elsewhere will only distract you from what needs attention in your own connection. Intentional love also understands that time is currency. Where you invest it reveals what you value. Being physically present but mentally elsewhere sends a message. Attention is one of the most powerful expressions of love, and it's also one of the most neglected. Love becomes powerful when two people stop relying on feelings and start relying on commitment. Feelings fluctuate. Commitment anchors. And commitment isn't about obligation, it's about choice. A conscious, repeated choice. If you want love to last, stop waiting for it to carry you and start carrying it with intention. Because love that is chosen daily doesn't fade, it deepens. Standards are not walls meant to keep love out, they are boundaries designed to protect it. And this is where many young couples get it wrong. They believe that having standards makes them demanding, difficult, or unloving, so they lower them to keep the peace. They tolerate behavior they shouldn't. They stay quiet about things that hurt them. And over time, love doesn't grow deeper. It grows weaker. When you remove standards from a relationship, you don't create freedom, you create confusion. You create a dynamic where respect beckons. Me's optional and effort becomes inconsistent. Standards are what define how love is expressed, how conflict is handled, and how two people treat each other when emotions are high. Let this be clear. Standards are not about control. They're about self-respect. They're about knowing what behavior you will accept and what behavior you won't. And when you don't define that, someone else will. Usually in ways that don't serve you. A lot of people stay in situations that drain them because they're afraid of being seen as too much. But asking for respect is not too much. Asking for consistency is not too much. Asking to be treated with care is not too much. What's too much is abandoning yourself just to keep someone close. Standards don't push the right people away. They filter out the wrong ones. And in a committed relationship, they don't create distance, they create safety. Because when both people understand the expectations, there's less guessing, less anxiety, and less resentment. One of the biggest misconceptions is that love should be unconditional in how it's tolerated. Love can be unconditional in intention, but access to you should always be conditional on respect. If someone repeatedly crosses your boundaries, dismisses your feelings, or ignores your needs, that's not love being tested, that's your standards being ignored. And here's the part that takes courage. Enforcing standards requires action, not just words. It's easy to say what you won't accept. It's harder to follow through when those boundaries are crossed. But boundaries without consequences are just suggestions, and suggestions don't protect relationships. Clarity does. Having standards also means holding yourself accountable. You can't demand emotional maturity while avoiding it yourself. You can't expect honesty while being evasive. Standards are not a list of demands for your partner. They're A mirror for your own behavior as well. When standards are mutual, relationships feel balanced. There's effort on both sides. There's respect on both sides. There's emotional responsibility on both sides. And that balance is what keeps resentment from building quietly over time. Lowering your standards won't make someone love you more. It will only teach them how little effort is required to keep you. And over time, that erodes attraction. Respect fuels attraction. Boundaries sustain it. Standards also protect you from confusing chaos with passion. Intensity without stability is not love. It's unpredictability. And unpredictability may feel exciting at first, but it's exhausting long term. Standards create consistency, and consistency is what allows love to feel safe. If someone truly values you, your standards won't feel like pressure to them. They'll feel like clarity. They'll rise to meet them, not resist them. Resistance often reveals misalignment, not misunderstanding. And remember this, love that requires you to shrink, stay silent, or accept less than you deserve is not love. It's attachment. Real love grows when both people feel respected, valued, and secure. Protect your love with standards because boundaries don't weaken relationships. They strengthen the ones worth keeping. The strongest relationships are not built by two people trying to complete each other, but by two individuals who are already whole, choosing to walk together. And this is a message young couples need to hear early, because the idea that love should fix you or fill your emptiness creates unhealthy expectations from the start. When you enter a relationship looking for completion, you place pressure on your partner that no human being can sustain. You expect them to heal wounds they didn't create. You expect them to provide confidence you haven't built. You expect their presence to silence insecurities you haven't faced. And when they inevitably fall short, disappointment follows. A healthy relationship begins with self-responsibility. That means knowing who you are, what you value, and what you need to work on. It means understanding your emotional patterns instead of projecting them. It means taking ownership of your growth instead of outsourcing it to someone else. Two whole people don't come together out of fear of being alone. They come together out of choice. They're not clinging, they're aligned. And alignment is powerful because it's built on shared values, mutual respect, and compatible direction, not emotional dependency. Emotional dependency often disguises itself as deep love. It looks like constant reassurance. It looks like losing your identity to keep the connection. It looks like panic at the thought of separation even when the relationship is unhealthy. That's not love, that's attachment driven by insecurity. Wholeness means you can stand on your own emotionally. You don't collapse when your partner has a bad day. You don't lose yourself when conflict arises. You don't need constant validation to feel secure. You bring stability into the relationship instead of seeking it from the relationship. This doesn't mean you don't need your partner. It means you don't need them to be okay. There's a difference. Needing someone for companionship, connection, and shared growth is healthy. Needing them to regulate your emotions, define your worth, or give your life meaning is not. When two whole people come together, support replaces rescue. Encouragement replaces pressure. Growth becomes mutual instead of one-sided. Each person takes responsibility for their own healing while still being present for the other. Wholeness also allows honesty without fear. When you're secure in yourself, you don't view feedback as rejection. You don't take every disagreement personally. You can hear hard truths without feeling threatened, and that level of emotional security deepens trust. Alignment matters here. Being whole doesn't mean being perfect. It means being aware. It means knowing whether your values, goals, and lifestyles actually fit. Love alone is not enough to sustain a relationship if alignment is missing. Attraction can pull people together, but alignment is what keeps them moving forward in the same direction. Too many couples ignore misalignment because feelings are strong. They hope love will eventually fix fundamental differences. But wholeness allows you to see clearly. It allows you to choose wisely instead of desperately. Being whole also means maintaining your individuality. You don't abandon your purpose, friendships, or personal growth to keep a relationship alive. You integrate love into your life. You don't replace your life with love. And here's the truth that changes everything. When two people are whole, the relationship becomes a place of expansion, not survival. You grow faster, you love deeper, you build something healthier because neither person is carrying the emotional weight alone. Love is strongest when it's a partnership, not a lifeline. When both people show up grounded, self-aware, and committed to growth, the connection becomes steady instead of fragile. Two whole people don't complete each other, they complement each other, and that's where real love begins.